think vision is really important. I always use the example that my daughter, I have two older boys. I have a 27-year-old and a 23-year-old. And they were like so easy as kids. And when I had my daughter, I was like, oh my God, girls are like so cranky. Like, oh my God, like what is up with girls? And she was just cranky and crying all the time. And I was like, what is up? And one day I picked her up from preschool and there was a note on her backpack and it says, take your daughter immediately to the optometrist. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Well, my dad was an optometrist for 52 years. And I took her to the optometrist and she couldn't see. And so what I realized was she was so cranky because she couldn't see. And I think the reason why people are frustrated right now in their lives after this mandatory pause, I don't like to call it COVID, but I think why people are so frustrated is they can't see a vision of what's out there. Even she just ran out of contacts, and today they called from the optometrist saying her, and she was cranky yesterday. She's like, Mom, without my glasses, I'm like really cranky. I'm like, yeah, baby, because you can't see. So I would say that self-development, personal development is so important so that you can start to see again, so you can start create that vision again, so you can see what is possible.
Welcome to the Can't Fifi Uncensored Podcast, Season 3, Episode 31, with my guest, Loren Lahav. And I am just here to say, when I first had the opportunity to hear Loren speak on the stages of the Worry Studios with all these powerful women, she stuck out like a bright light. All these women who were doing extraordinary things had extraordinary accomplishments. Loren is one of these women. And the fact that I got to align with her and have her on this podcast to be able to share her path really has been a gift that I can't wait for you to listen to. A leading international speaker, author, coach, a woman who has helped so many around the world, who is aligned with Tony Robbins and has her own coaching and inspirational gatherings for staying true to who you are, leaning in towards women and being their truth. I cannot wait for you to sit down and listen. So grab that coffee and grab that cannoli, because here we go. Hi, Loren.
How are you? Good. You look beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to my long hair coming back. But
you're feeling well.
Oh, I feel amazing. I feel like myself. I feel like 2 weeks ago I turned a corner, and I feel really, really lucky and so grateful. I mean, my life has been saved. And frankly, honestly, last November, I was so healthy and everything was so great. And literally just out of the blue was asking questions. And thank God I just kept asking questions, being who I am, and didn't accept no for an answer.
My cousin, probably how many years ago, 30 years ago, she had this horse that she had forever. And she moved from North Carolina to California. She brought her horse with her, and one day her horse just bucked her off. She had to go to the emergency room, and they said, your horse saved your life, because her horse felt she had ovarian cancer, stage 1 ovarian cancer. And so then we all went and had the test, the BRCA the test.
Yeah.
And it was my cousins, the other side of my cousin's family. And so there were 3 girls, and they went and, did what they decided, except one of my cousins didn't go and do it, and she died. Not the one who had the testing, the sister, but my cousin now, I got goosebumps.
Yeah, I
My
have
second,
chills.
my second cousin, her daughter is now doing research. She's a doctor. They're both doctors, and they're trying to do it where they can actually shut off the gene of,
That would be amazing.
they're literally,
The
that's actually what her whole, everything that she's been working on is to be able to to turn off the gene.
Loren, that is amazing. I was pre-med, so I've always been very science oriented, but I was
Right.
also an artist, and I was also, I've made my career in entertainment. And through this whole like journey, I feel like a lot of light has been dimmed because of the people I've had to work with, not because
Yeah.
I've had to work with, because of who I'm aligned with, which are lead actors and actresses and producers and directors and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I came in to be a filmmaker. I came in to be a director.
Right.
And, a woman over 30 years ago wasn't allowed to direct. And that's not a sad story. That's just a fact. And so, you find that you go through this path of, giving, 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 and lightning, and people keep taking. And, when your core, at your core, like you have this light, you have this power, but it's a humble thing. And then this kind of came along, and, one of the reasons why I've always wanted to connect with you was because I saw you for the first time. You came into my sphere over this last few years when you were on Eric and Marina Warry's stage.
Oh, wow. Oh, really?
But ironically, I was doing things messy because the entertainment industry was shut down. I was trying to figure things out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be on the stage with people like this. Like, this is who I am. And I don't mean necessarily regarding network marketing. I mean, just as a public speaker.
Right.
And so like you and Marina and women of this nature were just like, oh my God, there's my tribe. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. They just don't know me yet. And I say that with, again, humility, because that sounds like a major statement. And when you say that around people who are in the limelight or on, the 40-foot screen and on the red carpet, they look at you like you're nuts. And I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute. Like, aren't we all supposed to be raising each other up? This is what I've done all my life, is raise people up. And so I really started to come into the reality. And so then when the ovarian cancer diagnosis occurred, I just was like, I've got to have the courage, which I know I have, but I have the courage to do this also messy and just selflessly share my story, because I've always been a healer, and I've always been somebody who wanted to wake people up and advocate and educate. And so when I went public in December after my surgery, I mean, look, I don't have, thousands and thousands and millions, and I'm not going on TikTok to blow myself up. It's just like little by little, organically. But that really started to make a difference, where I think people were starting to lean into like who I've always been.
Yeah.
I just happen to have this story now that kind of opened that door, which I think is like also in perfect alignment of why I wanted to connect with you, because I launched my podcast a year and a half ago. And that was something I wanted to do like 9 years back, when people weren't even talking about podcasts. It was Hebrew.
Yeah.
They were like, what's a podcast? And I was like, anyhow, so I finally, after all this, lots of things happened, I just was like, enough already. I've just got to start chipping away at this living sculpture of mine.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that's true to me. Ironically. And I have to tell you, Loren, out of all the women, though, knowing that we've never met until right now,
isn't that funny?
Effectively, I just was always like, I know that this, and I mean, I just have always felt like this is somebody we would have been running together. I don't care what you've achieved, what I have achieved. I don't care about any of that. I just feel like two souls in alignment. Just there's something that really resonates.
For sure. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, did you get to plug into the event I did? Did you get to plug into that on your Worth event or no?
So ironically, I was going through chemo when that was happening. So I was signed up for it and I didn't get to, which I'm sorry I didn't get to. But again, I just feel like I don't even know what it is that it looks like, but I feel like we're supposed to
So
be doing something
where
together.
are you? Where do you live?
I'm in LA. Where are you?
I'm in Vegas.
Is that where you reside or anchor out of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally, if I may
North
ask?
Carolina.
Okay. And when you so I just want to take this back for a second. When you aligned with Tony's program, Tony Robbins, which I've never worked with Tony, but when you started going down that path in 1990, what was it that led you to that space that has, now created this
Oh my
whole
gosh. Are we
future?
recording? Are we going for it?
We're going. Let's do this.
Well, I mean, if you want to know the whole backstory behind it, I can kind of take you through the whole backstory.
I'd love to. Yeah, I want to hear it.
So I am originally from Asheville, North Carolina. And when I grew up, I thought that you're supposed to go to school, get a job, get married, have kids. That's just what life is. I think like so many of us. And I went to the University of Georgia and I was a journalism major and I was going to go work for CNN when they first started off in the 80s. And I was offered a job as a news correspondent for CNN. And I think it was paying like $12,000 a year back then. And I was like, well, I can't even pay my rent back then. I think it was still $1,000 a month to live in Atlanta. And like any good college graduate, I went and got my doctorate of waitressing. And I moved to Vail, Colorado. But the backstory even behind that is when I was at college, I was walking back from a football game with my boyfriend at the time. And he saw the book Unlimited Power in the bookstore. And he's like, oh my God, that's so you. And this was 1987. And so we went in the bookstore and he picks up the book and he goes, one day we're going to go to this Tony Robbins seminar. And Tony's on the back of the book with a whole 3-piece suit and suspenders. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm moving to Atlanta and I'm going to work for CNN. So I went to Colorado and I just, I didn't follow the path that everybody thought that I was going to do. I got into sports marketing and waitress, worked about 4 jobs, just meeting people. I love to meet people. And one day my manager, who knew I was going to kind of transitioning to sports marketing, he would sit anybody that had to do with the world of sports at my table. So one day he sat this table full of men and they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a waitress in Colorado for the rest of my life. And I said, no, I want to get into sports marketing. So they all start laughing and I put on my sass. And I said, look, that's what I'm going to do. And it turned out it was the world of sports, everybody from the world of sports. And at the head of the table was an amazing man named Joe Harper. Oops, my dog likes Joe Harper, I guess.
Oh, good.
And
probably will happen here too.
He goes, my name's Joe Harper. I'm general manager of the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. I'd love for you to come work for me. And I look at him, I'm like, where is Del Mar? And he goes, you're perfect. And he said, do you know who that is sitting over there? I said, no, sir, I treat everybody the same. Do you know who that is sitting over there? And there was a lot of different celebrities. And so he goes, when can you move? And my manager came up behind me and he said, I'll get her moved next week. So I moved to California, not knowing a soul, and started working at the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club in the group sales and events. And I was a winner's circle girl as well. So some of my favorite people that I met were like Tim Conway would come out and Robert Wagner, and just it was so awesome just meeting extraordinary people. And anyway, I loved what I did, but I got there and I was like, this is it? Like, this is all? I'm like, this doesn't feel like the real fulfillment. Tony Robbins talks a lot about the difference between the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. And I was missing that part of fulfillment for myself. I was around wonderful people. I love what I did, but my parents raised me with very strong contribution values. And I was missing that part. In November 1989, someone said, look, we're going to go deliver food to the homeless. Do you want to go? And I go, that would be awesome. So I ended up at this big house in Del Mar, but everybody had a big house in Del Mar. This house just happened to be in the shape of a castle. So there were about 25 people there. We start putting together these baskets. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I come back from delivering the food and I'm walking around the turret of the castle. And I see this guy in the president, this guy in Nelson Mandela, and I get to a giant shadow box and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the book. Like that's the book from college. And Tony was only 29 at the time. And he comes up behind me and he goes, hey, have you read my book? And I was 24. I'm like, no, but I have it. And he said, look, I saw you had a really great time today. I'd like to invite you to stay for dinner. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I sit down, there's, like I said, there's 25 people and everybody's like, what are you doing here? Who is this girl? And I'm like, I don't know, that big guy just invited me to stay here. And he goes, this is Robbins Research. This is Tony Robbins' company. I'm like, all right, whatever. And then he asked everybody, I didn't realize where I was. I didn't realize it was the beginning of something huge. Tony's goal was to deliver 100 meals, and now it's 100 billion meals is his focus. And so anyway, I went and I met some amazing people, and Tony asked everybody to stand up and say what they were most grateful for. And I felt my heart sink for a minute. I was like, I haven't asked myself that question in a really long time. And I said, I'm grateful that I finally met a group of people like this. I didn't know that they were out there. And I really was. I was like, wow, more people like me. But I went back to do what most of us do. We're like, well, it can't really be like that. It really can't, I can't live my life like that every day. But I say that there was this beautiful angel that sat on my shoulder and said, but remember, those people are really there. You just need to call on them. And about 6 months later, my friend who invited me to Thanksgiving offered me a room in his house. And it turned out he was renting the same room to me that he was renting to someone else. And it was this guy from Thanksgiving who is now the father of my 3 children. So you never know who you'll meet, and was the 5th employee at Robbins. And they asked me to come work there in the events and production department. So that's my story is a little bit different than how most people, I think, fall into it. And mine was because of an experience when Tony was really just getting started. And a lot of people were like, oh, this is never, I remember when we first went to the UK and they're like, this is never going to happen. This isn't going to work here. And, Tony's conviction and his laser focusedness, his heart, everything about him. I remember watching the Charlie Rose show, the Round Table Charlie Rose show about, it was remember this, I was pregnant with my son, so it would have been 2000, but I could have sat there with like a checklist. I'm like, yep, remember when that happened? Yep, remember when that happened? And so Tony's resilience and commitment is just unbelievable. But that's the backstory. It's a little long, but I thought that maybe you want to kind of know the backstory.
No, it's an amazing backstory. And then you started working with them. And then from there, they ended up pulling you up into starting their whole new.
So I created the crew program for Robbins. It's like people would come to events and I'd be like, hang on, we need a family within a family. And that was my big things. I also used to organize a day called Project Contribution. It was when we would do a big program in Hawaii, have about 2,500 participants, and we would send them for a day of contribution. And about 50% of the people would show up to go do that. And the rest of the time, the other 50% would kind of take the day off. And in 2001, we were there September 2001, and I was like, God, something's pulling me. I feel like I should just set up projects for everybody. I don't know why. And then 9/11 happened. And so everybody was like, what can I do to help and to serve? So we were on Kona, which was on the Big Island. It was interesting time. What happens when you get stuck on a rock? And, everybody's like wondering if they're in the right place. So that's when Tony, we brought speakers in via satellite. And many of the speakers were actually better via satellite than they were live. So Tony's like, hey, I've got a resort in Fiji. I've got great content. I've got people that can, go teach the program. So he asked me to move to Fiji and launch the program. So I moved my family to Fiji. We were teaching about 36 week-long programs a year, as it was kind of like Groundhog Day. A group would come in, we'd fall in love with them. Then another group would come in and we'd fall in love with them. And we did that for about 2.5 years. And then over the past 22 years, I still teach the program, but it's different now. I teach about 4 programs a year, but there's about 7 a year. And yeah, and so I do it now, and I love it. I'm still very, very grateful to have the opportunity to teach that. But then I do my other things. I think that's the biggest compliment I could pay Tony, is like, how do I take what I've learned and really apply it to my own life versus, becoming I don't want to be him. I want to be my best
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And he blessed you with that, going
Yeah,
out
I
and
mean, oh yeah,
applying.
well, I think that, I mean, I remember once when I said to him, I said, why did you pick me to come launch this program? I go, there's more people with more skill and have been in the trenches. And he said something really powerful to me. He said, Loren, because I knew you take care of these people. And I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. And he said, the skills will show up. I think that's what, if I would say anything to people these days, it's like, I see people thinking that they have to have more skill. They have to have more this. They have to, and no, you just have to get out there in the trenches. Or people go, I need to get paid speaking gigs. And I always say to people, get out there and just talk. Like, I can't tell you how many things I do, and have done for the past 33 years, just so that I can get the experience. So, versus demanding that, you get paid for certain things. You talk to a
Right.
lot of people now. I think that it's not fair to people. You're not really setting people up well. If you don't tell them to get, go out there, go speak at schools, go speak at senior homes, go do something just to give back versus it just being all about the money. That's just my personal opinion, of what I've seen, and what's for me, I think built my unshakable confidence in just who I am. Like, I just came back from Australia. I did a month, and I was doing 3 events a day. And I was at in this one little town in Australia, and this woman just went off on me, like totally went off on me about being American. And my friend looked over, and I was like, I got this, and I think it's because I've had so much time in the trenches that I was able to handle it with elegance and grace. Whereas if I hadn't, it had so much immersion. I don't know, what would have happened, because it was really intense. So, that's what happens when all people do is watch the news, I guess. So that's a little bit of the, but yeah. And so then, I'm very, I mean, I said to Tony, when I started doing the events at their Worry studio, I've rented it 4 times. It's not a inexpensive place to work. I didn't have, like you said, I didn't have the millions of dollars to be able to do what it was, but I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. And I remember saying, look, I modeled what Tony did. I modeled what Eric did. And I was like, I know what to do. I've got a great team of people. Why wouldn't I just do this? And that's pretty much where it's at. So I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again in August. I'm doing it again in March next year. I'm doing it again in January of next year. So.
Well, I applaud you, because first off, I think, self-development is something that is, I don't know, it's such a loosely used term, but it's such an important factor. And I think all of our lives. And I think people either delve into it consciously or unconsciously, or just want to stay far the hell away from whatever that is. And I've always been somebody who's always been curious by nature. And I, like you in the 80s, fell into it, but on my own kind of quiet path. I think it was literally, I think it was a combination of a therapist who was practicing science of the mind, and I was doing retreats. I never aligned with Tony. It really wasn't until the pandemic that the Dean Graciosi, Tony stuff started kind of coming up with. It was how can you take your story and make it into something that can resonate with others in need, and I think that goes back to the story I shared earlier, which was, when I was getting out of the hospital, when I said, Felicia, if not now, when, that you're going to selflessly share your story to powerfully, help others. And this does resonate with me. And I think it's so interesting. In a million years, when you think of your life path, and you think, how did I get here? And was this like a part of the plan, or how much of this was that I drove this course? In my question to you is, how much do you think consciously you formulated that versus being in the right place at the right time and recognizing opportunity and just being the willingness to, step into that?
I think I was never attached to anything. I was never attached, it's kind of like, it's very, very interesting that like I turned down that job at CNN, and when it was very full circle for me when the whole virtual world happened, because Tony asked me to teach the virtual life mastery program. And I was watching all these other people. I was watching Dean. I was watching some of the other people that were presenting. And of course I was like, oh my God, like I hope when I do the virtual, I'm going to be all right to do it. And I go out there and, it's direct to camera. So the guys come running off stage, like after I'd been up there for 30 minutes, and they're like, Loren. And I'm like, what? And they go, when was the last time you were in front of a camera like that? And I'm like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Like what happened? And they go, no, baby, you eat that up. Like you and Tony like know how to work that camera very authentically. And I was just saying how it just came back from so many years ago when I was a journalism major. I was like, oh my God, like I think so much of it, like I said, like I don't have any expectations. I didn't know it was going to show up of me speaking and writing and doing these things like as books and as seminars. I thought that, like I said, I thought I was going to be a news correspondent when I was, when I was in college. So I think that, I'm really good. I'm really good at it, and I'm really good at putting on events. It's like I have this event. I have 3 events coming up in August, 3, and they're totally different events. One is with my mastermind group of ladies, and we're going to Sedona. And so I was waiting for people to do things. I'm like, F it, I'm just going to like figure it out. And in a day I hunkered down and I got everything done. Right. And versus like trying to find people who can find people. I'm like, I know people, I can do this, that. And then I was this other event that I have going on in August. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to get this done. I'm just gonna make these reservations. I'm gonna do this. I'm going to do that. So I don't know. I think there was something that saw that I had a gift to give. And I don't know, I found a home. I think that's the biggest thing, is not having attachments to how it looks. Right. Especially as things change so quickly now. Right. Like it's not the same. You've got to adapt. And you were just talking about personal development and self-development. Warren Buffett says the best investment you'll ever make is investing in yourself. And, but I see a lot of people get stuck in what I call seminar soup, and they go from event to event to event to event, and then they don't do the work. Right. And they've got the self-help becomes shelf-help, and they never take the workbook off the shelf and actually do the work. You can see my boards behind me, my manifestation boards. I have 30 years of them. And I really say to myself, who do I really need to become if I really want to make this happen? And I don't make up excuses. I think of like, what can I really do to take action and make those things happen? I remember when we were doing these events called, what were they? Success resource events. These, and I was emceeing events with Dean, Shark, Tony, all those different people. And, Dean like had a big vision of what he was going to create. This was before COVID, with regards to everything. And, I think vision's really important. I always use the example that my daughter, I have 2 older boys. I have a 27-year-old and a 23-year-old. And they were like so easy as kids. And when I had my daughter, I was like, oh my God, girls are like so cranky. Like, oh my God, like what is up with girls? And she was just cranky and crying all the time. And I was like, what is up? And one day I picked her up from preschool, and there was a note on her backpack, and it says, take your daughter immediately to the optometrist. And I was like, what? That's crazy. My dad was an optometrist for 52 years. And I took her to the optometrist, and she couldn't see. And so what I realized was she was so cranky because she couldn't see. And I think the reason why people are frustrated right now in their lives after this mandatory pause, I don't like to call it COVID, but I think why people are so frustrated is they can't see a vision of what's out there. Even she just ran out of contacts, and today they called from the optometrist saying her, and she was cranky yesterday. She's like, Mom, without my glasses, I'm like really cranky. I'm like, yeah, baby, because you can't see. So I would say that self-development, personal development is so important so that you can start to see again, so you can start create that vision again, so you can see what is possible without seeing literally seeing
Yeah.
what's possible. And like for me, it's like, and I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but it's like I knew I was going to be okay with regards to everything because I know who I am, right? Like no matter, it's kind of like I feel centered within whatever storms are happening, like just like you knew you're going to be all right because you know who you are. And helping people get, associated to that is the most important thing, I believe.
I completely concur. Literally, Lauren, right before I got on, and you're going to be the the fourth person. And it's so funny because it was my trainer who I had literally just finished with, then my best childhood friend who's a retired cop and a federal marshal, and then one other person, and now yourself, literally. So after I got told I was in remission for ovarian cancer, and I knew that I was not going to be somebody who was going to die, and that this was going to be clear, and I was going to align myself to the proper teams. And I'm one of these people like yourself, and I say like yourself in this relativity is like, I've always been a visionary ever since I was a little girl. I never knew what vision boards were. I was just doing them. I was just doing this since I was like 7, 8, 9 years old, plastering my walls. Like if I turn, I've just literally changed where my desk position is because I just feng shuied our house yesterday, which upset the cart with my husband, which is why I'm draped like this, because until I get things figured out. But I've always had to like have those things put up so I can relieve my brain from carrying it all in here and just put it out to the world. But my point is that after I was told I was in remission, I survived thyroid cancer a decade ago, and I went through 4 surgeries, which is why my voice is rough, which is ironic because I've always been a great speaker. I've always been a great leader. I've made a lot of impact on the worlds that I've been around, which is why being a part of the entertainment world is interesting, that I didn't, that even though I'm award winning and all the things and the people whose lives I touch is really great, there's a lot of people who can't handle your power. So I've always felt like a kind of a fish out of water kind of a thing, which is a weird thing to say because it's like that's why like having this intermittent space of time, whether you call it the pandemic or you call it like transitions or whatever.
The mandatory pause, I call it. Yep.
Yeah,
the mandatory pause.
I love it. Well, I just was like, oh, this is my opportunity to start like, getting back to my core. So after remission, I had to do ultrasounds and scans to, see where things are at, including my thyroid. And they start telling me there's an uptick and there might be radiation and chemo. And I said, stop right there. No, I'm not doing this. I will not have anything like my swallowing affected. I will not be put on a feeding tube. When you all get together as your cancer board discussions, just know you will all be written this, and I'm telling you right now, nobody is going to do this to me if and when there needs to be a surgery, if at all. Also, my trachea, my esophagus, my vocal cords will not be harmed, everything, because I've got a lot of speaking to do for the next 30, 40 plus years. I've got a lot of people I need to inspire. And it's not because of my ego. It's because I've got to tell my story to help other people get the fuck back up, to tell people that no matter what life puts in front of you, you have to know that you have the power to get back up. You have the power to drive your own course. And anyhow, I literally right now just found out that the uptick is like minor. There will be no radiation and chemo as per my request. If and when the surgery occurs, they're just going to be watching it. So now I can go on from my maintenance for my ovarian cancer. And it's all the things that I put out there. And I'm just basically mimicking what you're talking about in this health situation right now. And I don't want my story to be about my health. My story has so many other layers to my achievements, my whys, my whatever. But this is a current personal perfect example of being clear, putting it out there to the world and manifesting it to the way that you want to create it.
Yeah, I heard a great speaker when I was in Australia. His name is Michael Crossland. And I mean, he's been sick since he was little. And his mom would always say, even when the doctors would say something negative, he'd say, well, what they say, the mom would always say, everything's going to be okay. So she never let him know, even it was when the most dire times or when he went through it. And so when he got older and he had some even other health challenges, it's that everything's going to be okay. You know, I mean, the thing is, you know, I think that the thing, and that so many great people out there with so many beautiful messages, and I'm excited for you to share it, is that unfortunately, right, like too many times people are making excuses, right? They're like, well, it's not that bad, or life is okay. I was coming back from Australia. You know, I normally do like my 1 year outcomes, and then my 10-year outcomes, and then my 30-year outcomes. And I'm like, holy shit, like 30 years, I'm going to be 88 years old. And I think we all think that we just have so much time. And I think that I would just say to people, get started today, do something to move you forward, do something to get 1% better today, anything to get 1% better today. It's like I've been gone and I'd love to walk. We have a nice little walk, a 3 mile, and I'm like, oh, and then like feel like going at all. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to walk 2/3 of the way today, not the whole thing. Right. And then tomorrow I'll do a little bit more and do a little bit more and do a little bit more just to get back in the swing of things. But I think be kind to yourself, right, with regards to that. But I would say I do believe that, you can't make an impact on the world until you clean up your own backyard. And most people have got some cleaning to do, right? I mean, I just went through my closets, and yet my daughter wanted to have somebody clean her, do her closets. That's what was one of her birthday presents. And she felt, my daughter feels like, oh, Mom, look, oh, I feel so good. And then last night she took out, a bunch of her clothes to get together with all of her girlfriends, 3 bags of clothes. And she sends me pictures of everybody going through and how happy people were. And then I was like, come on, Asher, let's do it. Let's go into mine. And I'm like, oh, mine can't be that bad. And then I was like, oh my God, like, oof, right? And now I'm just like, so clear, so clean. So I would say, do something today to clean up your own backyard, whether it's your closet, whether it's a drawer, whether it's somebody you need to forgive, maybe it's, somebody you need to have a conversation with. Do something so that you're getting a little bit better. So
it's 100% true. And it's interesting because back in the mid 2000s, I was doing several projects, movies, and series, and I've always been an idea person. I had come up with an idea because I really do believe in the process of feng shui. I think we all intuitively do it, but there's something about flow, and there's something about clearing space that allows for things to come in versus stuck energy. And I'm big on when it comes to physics and, the galaxy in that way, when it comes to science and the power of those thoughts. And we as energy can't, if we get stuck, going back to attachment, if you get too attached, like what I call a barnacle on a boat, you're never going to manifest anything. You got to get those barnacles off the boat, is what I say. Yeah. And so, I'm big into acupuncture also. I'm just into, whether it's holistic metaphysics, Western, I like it all. But I'd rather be on the other side of than the person going, oh God. And most of the time I have been, and that I want to just say, regarding my message has not been about me so much as using my example to teach and inspire others. And that's what I've always gone about this whole like last 6-7 months publicly, and leading up to what hopefully becomes something greater. But getting back to the feng shui, I was like, I went to see my acupuncturist for the first time, my normal acupuncturist, and she was telling me how in their office, because I was at her home, how they had brought in this friend of hers that's a client who does feng shui, but not really professionally, and how much it shifted. And I said, oh my God, I haven't been working with a feng shui person in a really long time. I'd really love this contact information. This woman, I reach out to right away. She ends up like, being like a good old Midwest girl like myself, similar of age, it really resonates. Says, yeah, let's get together. It comes over yesterday, spends 3 hours. Loren, it's like, I'm very production oriented. Like you have to be, because, in production world,
Yeah,
you got a show to deliver. You did, time is of the essence. You don't sit
exactly.
around and twiddle your navel. Like you would never get to the stage. You would never get the production. You would never deliver the product. So I'm very much a take action person. And so as soon as she left and she was like, no, just, relax. Oh no, I like, probably affected like four or five rooms in our house already. And because of it, things have already shifted. I've gotten this great news about my health. I woke up this morning, you saying yes. I mean, it stirred up some things with my husband, which I'm sure is like, just because he came home late last night from work, and it's a lot of
Yeah,
shifting and it's a lot of energy, and he wasn't as ready for it, but
yeah,
I'm doing it for the two of us. And and I
absolutely.
know that he'll catch up, and because I believe, and I believe that everybody's going to do it in their own way, but I know I have a vision and I want to see it through,
I
because there's
love
a
it.
lot of life and a lot of accomplishment to achieve. And
I
that's
agree.
that's the thing. You gotta be a take action. You gotta like move the chalk, take to move the penny, move the rock, move whatever it is to like see shifts.
Absolutely. I love it for
I'm
sure.
curious for you, because you are obviously an opportunity. To me, you are a person who takes opportunity and runs with it. You don't, and I do love the fact that you said you're not attached. A lot of people are attached. A lot of people have attachments that they can't, let go of. And what do you think, like, if you took yourself back to like when you were a little girl, like under the age of 7, what were you thinking of? What were you visualizing? What were you imagining? What were the things that really resonated and you loved? I'm just really curious.
Can I use foul language on here?
You can say as many foul things as you want. That's why it's called Can't Be the
Uh,
Uncensored.
yeah, yeah. It was not so good for me when I was under the age of 7 at all.
Okay.
I was very much, without me, I was a very sweet little girl, but I was probably in my head, if I could say the words F you
Yes, please.
to say F you to all of, a lot of people, I probably would. I'm actually writing another book right now. And my friend, who's a big publicist, she's like, Loren, she goes, you need to tell it all. And I'm like, all of it? Like, she goes, all of it. And I'm from North Carolina, like I said, a town called Asheville, North Carolina. And everybody's like, oh, Asheville's so beautiful. It's so wonderful. It's so cosmically wonderful. And it was not that way when I grew up there. I'm a little Jewish girl who went to Catholic school. Me and my brother, it was not fun. There were parts of Asheville where, now obviously there's more immigrants from different countries and more diversity, but not when I grew up there. It was no blacks, no Jews, no anybody, they weren't allowed in certain parts of Asheville. And it was very hard. It was very difficult. I hated it. I hated it. I think that if I wouldn't have had such amazing parents who gave me a very strong internal, I don't even know if they know that they did. My brother doesn't think that they did. I think that they did. Um, you listen to my brother's story and you listen to my story, they're very, very different, um, about how we saw the world. But I used it as like, F you, I'm going to show you, I'm going to freaking go on and I'm going to become like, I mean, I really saw myself as like the top news correspondent. I saw myself like having a TV show. I saw myself like, F you guys, you don't, I'm not going to be the small town girl that, there was a lady who was the local anchor, and her name was Darcel Grimes, and she was probably one of my biggest inspirations of having a career in broadcast. She was an African American woman, and I just love Darcel, and so I saw myself being Darcel, but on a bigger scale. I always saw myself that way. So, but it was more of a F you, I'll show you type of thing. Though I would never say that. And then I was 12 years old and I had a moment of like, we always talk about defining moments. And I had a moment where a guy did something not very nice to my brother. And I just like, I was like, that's it. I'm speaking up. That's it. I'm done with this whole thing. And now you can't shut me up, as we say. But I'm the girl that, fights for the underdog. And yeah, I think that was, it was not fun under the age of 7 at all. I didn't at all.
Well, listen, you know what? I relate to this. I'm a little Sicilian Jewish girl.
There you go.
And raised in the Midwest, where, like yourself, it's interesting. My mom said when the Civil War occurred, they should have kept the South separate from the North. And she meant that not from a, politically charged perspective, but just like, the mindset and the level of hatred and the things that
But
occurred.
I don't know if it was so much. I don't, my dad would always say that, the worst thing you could be is be ignorant. And I think lots of times, I mean, I'm very, very grateful to be from the South, honestly. I love it. And I love everything about it. I think that a lot of times, I mean, I went to a Catholic school. I went to a Catholic school. I went to Baptist churches. I was part of the Billy Graham revivals. I mean, I loved it all. I loved and appreciated all of it. And so I'm very, very grateful. I don't think that it's just the South. I just think that people just didn't know. I think people, did what, I mean, I watch movies and I, love history and I love everything about it. I think that people honestly just didn't know what they didn't know. And they took it based on, they would react because they thought that they were supposed to react different ways. But it just wasn't fun. I'm just saying that why I believe now it's more important than ever to, to help people. People have to wake up. Like this lady that she attacked me in Australia. It was really, and all these ladies afterwards asked me for my email address. And I'm like, I wonder why they're asking me for my email address. That's weird. And all these other women were like, wow, how you handled that was unbelievable, and so I'm very, I appreciate it all. I really do. I don't have any judgment about how, I mean, even as hard as it was, I don't know. I guess I don't in a way kind of blame anybody for anything. I'm like, okay, it was how it was. But I think that we have to just help people get emotionally strong, and just like knowing that. And like if people ask me now, like if I would change it, like would I? And I'd say, no, I wouldn't change it. I'm very grateful. It's made me, who I am, and it's made me resilient with regards to that. But I mean, I think just, yeah, I mean, I don't know. like this lady who attacked me, and she was telling me how, awful America is, and how, and started just going off, and you could obviously tell that she watched one side of the news and not understood, like, with me. Like for me growing up, and my parents would always say to me, it doesn't matter who you vote for, just as matters you go vote,
Right.
it's just that I didn't care if what people were, just like go out there and do your homework and do your research, and look at look at what makes sense. I'm very, very, I'll just say this because I feel that it's really important. I love America. I think that we have the greatest country in the world, and I've traveled a lot. And I got to tell you, we still have the most amazing country in the world. We do. I am very glad that I am not part of the media now at all, because this is not the media. It makes me cry. When I went to school, it was broadcast journalism where you had to have facts to back everything up. It was not your opinion. It was not what you think about it. I wanted to go to law school so that when I was a broadcast journalist, that I had the facts, that I understood the law, that I understood what things were okay to really get out there. And it's a little, I think it's very, very, we as a country, we need to step up and just like make sure that people really understand what's going on. My husband's an immigrant. He had to work really hard to get here. He knows when a couple of years ago, I had a party for him when it was 30 years since he immigrated to America, but he knows what we stand for. And I really respect that a lot. That's just, I think that we have to, there's a pride, about America. I'm grateful that I was the first girl from Western North Carolina ever to get an Army ROTC scholarship. I was like Private Benjamin, but I understand all of the branches of our government. I understand what to do if I was in a situation, I could, use a compass and a map and know how to get through it. This is our responsibility now to like teach people basic skills, but anyway, I went off a little bit on it, but
no, you're speaking my language, actually, things I talk about all the time. I think that we need to understand our civics, we need to understand our history, we need to understand what we need to be grateful for, we need to understand what we need to stand for, how we need to stay in that conversation, the importance of why, having your voice and fighting for the underdogs, the reason why, what we went through in the 60s and the 70s, it was things reasons why you and I as women could be educated, have our own name, our own checkbook, our own careers, our own homes, do whatever we want, our rights over our bodies. The fact that, I'm not here. I too, like you, was raised around all religions because, my Sicilian Catholic grandparents, I was going to church with them while at the same time, I had Lutheran, Presbyterian, Baptist friends. I saw it all. But I also saw what it was to be discriminated against.
Yeah.
Even though both sides of my family worked hard and were educated, and that's how we were raised to, my mom was 2 years younger than Ruth Bader Ginsburg and tried to go to law school. And in fact, wasn't allowed to, was told to go home and be the mother and the wife. And so I was raised around really strong females as well as men. And so needless to say, it's one of those things that
and I think we shouldn't take that for granted too, right?
No.
I think a lot of people really take our rights for granted.
They do
a lot. I personally, I remember once hearing Schwarzkopf speak at one of Tony's events, General Schwarzkopf, and someone asked him if he thought that everybody should have to join the military. And he said, no, I don't think that everybody should have to join the military. He says, but I do believe that everybody should have to earn the right to be an American. There's nothing wrong about our internships and candy stripers and, doing those type of things so that we understand how freaking lucky we are.
oh my God, yes. I know, I agree.
I travel to different places and I'm like, if people only knew, I mean, travel, get a feel for what we really, really do have here. And,
It's
this
true.
lady that went off on me, I'm like, you guys have 25 million people in your country. I love it. I love Australia. I said, we have 350 million people that are in our country. I said, I know what you see. I said, but there's so much good, if you study Kabbalah at all, I love
Yeah,
what
I
Kabbalah
have.
says, either you're adding light to the world or you're adding darkness to the world. That's basically every time you say something nice about someone, you're adding light to the world. Every time you say something negative, you're adding darkness to the world. Every time you say something nice about yourself, you're adding light to your body. Every time you're saying, right? Like it's why people go, why should I do grounding? Because grounding gives you energy from the earth. Why should you, why should you get out to the first light? Because it's the first light of the new day and it's going to bring you light, bring you energy. But, Kabbalah says that, if there's a mountain and a part pulls away from the mountain, what do we call it? We call it a boulder. We call it a landslide. The truth is it's still part of the mountain, and that we need to understand that if we're going to make anything better in the world, we better plug back in. We got to plug back in of us as individuals, is us, like that your win is my win and that my win is your win.
That's right.
That's what this is about. This isn't,
We're all connected.
So much separation, and
Yeah.
we wonder why we feel so bad,
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, you're 100% right. It's in our connection that we source each other and that we create life and energy. And it's really, really important. Listen, there's so much more that I could talk to you about. And I hope to be able to do this again sometime.
Me too.
Because I realize just how much more why I knew intuitively that I resonate with you, and I knew nothing about what you just shared. And I just absolutely love it. And there's a lot I could speak on, but I just want to thank you for your time.
Oh, of
I
course.
think that you are an incredible woman, and I love what little we've gotten to share here today. All the things that you have to offer women, life, the world. I love that you are using your voice and you're using your power and you're just, staying true, no pun intended, but helping others do the same.
Yeah. Well, that's my goal. I mean, it's been, I think that, I got to get louder, louder with regards to it. So I am working on a book now. It's actually, it's all about staying true. And I think that wherever you are, on the scale, get loud and proud with regards to it. But I think that we all want the same things. We all want our kids and family and ourselves to be healthy and happy and, to be able to add light to the world. I sure as hell hope. And, I mean, that's what it is. That's what it's all about.
And at the end of the day, none of the rest of it matters, but that. And that's definitely a huge takeaway for me.
And I think it's that whole thing, either you're a warning or you're an example of what's possible, and you're either a warning and example of how you want the world to be or how you don't want the world to be. And so I don't know. I'm choosing going for the good. I'm choosing to focus on the good. So
you have to. You have to, and you have to be, and you are a beacon of light. So, and I love your light. It's really attractive, and I'm very grateful to connect with it.
You too. All right. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Loren. Have a great day. Bye.
Did I not tell you it would be inspiring? It's really interesting when you get the opportunity to, as I put it, gather around the campfire and have authentic exchanges, connections, and conversations. What you get to find out about people that inspire you as they inspire me. And I hope that my conversation with Loren you found inspiring too, because she had so many key pieces that she shared that I think are great takeaways. So on that note, go to your listening platforms, subscribe, rank, share with your friends and family, because the Camp Fifi Uncensored community is growing. We have great goals to serve the needs of our listeners. If there's anything that you particularly want to hear, please feel free to share. I'm so looking forward to hearing next week's conversation with my guest, Laura Matthews. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. Take care. Much love. Bye for now.